you know what is front and center? It's the actual service industry, the restaurant industry. It's taken a huge hit from the coronavirus. It's probably one of the most exposed, obviously, because we're telling people, listen, we don't want you to be in business, but we want you to keep paying your people. So we need to speak to one of the people whom I regard as being a young deacon in the industry. We need to speak to David Gibbs. He's the CEO of Yum Brands, which employs tens of thousands of people and is trying to keep them on the payroll. So, David, thank you for joining Squawk on the Street. First, could you give us the scope of the situation for your company, then for the industry, and what you need and what you can do?
Sure. Thanks for having me, guys. Look, my number one message is we are open for business. Our restaurants have means to access us in a safe food in a low-contact environment. That's through drive-thru, delivery, carry-out. That's 18,000 restaurants in the U.S., 50,000 around the world. We have more restaurants than anybody else. We know a two or thing about those channels and how we can provide that food to customers in a safe manner. So open for business. And, of course, what guides us during times like these is what's always guided us, and that's our customers, our employees, and our franchisees. Jim, you said, tens of thousands of employees. Actually, in the United States, we have over 400,000 employees. That's got to be our number one priority right now, making sure these restaurants are operational, serving customers safe food in a way that they can, return to a little normalcy with our comfort food and our great value for them during tough times.
David, how do we assure health, and how do we assure the health of your patrons? I, for one, was possessed with my restaurants. Are we going to serve fresh food? Is it going to be clean? Or we have to worry? I mean, what are the positions? And I know you're in contact with Yum China, different company. What did they do there? I mean, even from Federal Express today, they're back to normal with China. I want to know what they did to transition between the abyss and now, where it looks like they're almost back to work. Give us the Yum China blueprint.
Look, all of our business in Asia obviously has dealt with this issue, so we're learning from them, as you mentioned. Yum China has been a leader, and their great CEO, Joey Watt, have done a fantastic job of reacting to the situation. And, you've seen some of the things that they've done in terms of safety and hygiene, rolling out, this idea of contactless delivery. They invented that concept. You're now seeing a lot of the companies in the U.S. start to play with it. We've already rolled that out in our U.S. restaurants. But in times like these, you need to be quick, agile, and you need to learn. You need to double down on what we have at Yum, which is already very strict food safety and hygiene procedures and cleaning and sanitation. We view our food safety as above and beyond. We're the largest restaurant company in the world. We've built trust with our consumers. We need to lean in on that and lead. So we do a lot of things electively before this situation developed to ensure the safety of the food supply that we provide customers. If you show up at one of our restaurants to work, the first thing you do is go through food safety training. If you're washing your hands, you wash your hands, then you sanitize them, and then you put on gloves. That extra step of sanitizing is not in every restaurant. We've been doing that for years. And then we do extra food safety audits beyond what the health department requires, just because it's the right thing to do for our customers and our employees. And we recertify those employees every year. But in times like this, you've got to go further. So what you see now is you see our employees wearing gloves at the drive-thru and the front counter and leaning in on this idea of contactless delivery, where you can place an order online and really avoid any contact with somebody else and get that food delivered to your door or pick it up in the restaurant in a contactless way.
Hey, David, Credit Suisse today says they see a quarter of households shifting 50% of their meal spend to home for the next 4 months. So this massive shift of share from restaurants to grocery, to the degree you're trying to protect it, can delivery and drive-thrus and contactless delivery, how much throughput can it offer?
Look, this is going to have different impacts on different restaurant companies. We're obviously well-positioned in terms of the impact it's going to have because our brands tend to have more off-premise consumption. So Taco Bell, for example, in a drive-thru, 75% of their business was already in the drive-thru plus some carry-out business. We weren't as reliant on the dining room. Obviously, Pizza Hut with delivery and carry-out, and then KFC, there's nothing better than taking a bucket of chicken home for your family during times like this. So I think we're well-positioned to deal with that, but it's certainly going to be a headwind for the entire industry and for us, and that's why we're going the extra mile right now to make sure we're set up to serve America America. I mean, I think the thing that people forget is, they think of us as large companies, but these are small businesses all around the country. Those 18,000 restaurants I mentioned, they're all run by franchisees. They're small business people. They're one of my highest priorities right now to make sure that we protect them and they can come out of this on the other end whole. And, our brands have been around for 60 years, a big part of the fabric of the country. The best thing we can do right now is those operators of 10 or 15 units in your community, go visit those restaurants, help them help their business, and have some great food at the same time.
And are you forgiving rent or for those franchisees that do pay you for rent?
Well, the model you're talking about is one that some of our competitors use where they own the real estate and then the rent is paid to the parent company. We don't have that model. Our franchisees are, as I say, they're small businesses. They have their own landlord situation. Sometimes they own the real estate. And, they're dealing with that on a case-by-case basis. What we will do is provide them some guidance in how they think through that with their lenders, with their landlords, and with other, obligations that they have.
David, what are you and your franchisees seeing right now in terms of your supply chain? Where are you focused? Are you seeing any hiccups or significant dislocations in that supply chain? Are you concerned about what may be coming, and what are you doing to potentially deal with that?
Yeah, actually, we're lucky. As the largest restaurant company in the United States, we have a massive supply chain co-op that services all three of our brands, over $5 billion in food purchasing a year. So we have a lot of professionals working on that challenge. Now, what I will say is, obviously, some of the demand has dried up in the restaurant industry, so we don't really see supply as a big challenge now because we have the great professionals working against it, and because there are restaurants closing. There is going to be some excess supply out there, but it's also just another reason that customers need to be frequenting our restaurants. It's not just the 400,000 employees in the restaurants; it's all the people that work on the supply chain. It's the farmers, the people in the factory. It's keeping all of them employed by giving your business to the local businesses in your community.
David, I appreciate everything you're saying. We have a $309 billion employee compensation for 2018 in payroll. This isn't big enough. You're not speaking big enough. You're talking about people going to restaurants. How much money do you need from the federal government to pay your people without a loan, to pay everyone involved in your chain? Because let's be realistic. No one's going to be able to get through to the other side. You're facing a Jordan River here. And I think it's really great that we might want to go get a bucket of KFC. Love it myself. But I need to know, if you were Secretary Mnuchin right now and you created $1 trillion fund, how much would David Gibbs and his team need, and how much would the restaurant group need? Because you're not going to be able to make it up with patrons.
Yeah, look, as you say, Jim, I'm focused on our part of the industry, and I recognize that these problems are bigger and broader than just the restaurant industry. But as far as what we need, I was fortunate enough to participate in the call that the White House had yesterday with Secretary Mnuchin and President Trump, and I was really pleased with the message I heard, which is they understand that keeping restaurants open for business is important for our economy and important for a safe food supply for everybody that lives in this great country. So there will be challenges, certainly financially, if sales soften. And the people that need the money is not Yum Brands. The people that are going to need the money are our great franchisees that are spread throughout this country. So this is more of a small business problem than it is a big corporate problem, and I think the administration understands that.
David, as we're talking, Starbucks authorization, $40 million repurchase. What is the buyback playbook from here?
Sure.
Well, obviously, the prudent thing for us to be doing right now is to making sure we have as much available for our franchisees and helping them in any ways that we can.
Yes.
So, we'll talk more about this when we get to our earnings call, but we're taking all the necessary actions that you could imagine. So that's not necessarily in our playbook.
David?
And David, finally, at least for me, how long do you anticipate that we're going to be dealing with this situation?
Look, I think that's an open-ended question. If I had the answer, I'd tell everybody. We've seen it play out in other markets, and we've seen some of them get to the other side. And I think it just depends on, how cautious we are and, the actions that we take as a country right now. And that's why I think we all should be, very vigilant and follow all the protocols that, and all the guidance that we're getting. And that includes, not eating in restaurants, but accessing them through drive-through, delivery, and carry-out channels.
David, in the end, we are a business channel, and we wanted to talk about shareholders. Is it possible to have a situation where we actually bail out the workers, which ultimately is better for the shareholders than bailing out the shareholders themselves and the entity and the executives? And the reason I mention that is because we're dealing with issues of equity that Mark Cuban, who is, I think, a great thinker of our time, is really addressing. And I want the workers to be protected, which I think ultimately will make it so that the entities get saved. Can you save the workers? Can you worry about health care and also save the entity itself?
Look, I think anything's possible, and it's just about how much money we spend. And I totally get the point that our focus should be on employees, small businesses, the people on the front lines of this, because then the entire, chain benefits. But we also obviously need to be careful. We can't let large corporations tip over because that would have obviously the impact on unemployment would be huge. So it's just a balancing act.
Yeah, so that's well said, David, and really want to thank you for coming on, given the fact that you are the largest and probably at the front line of what we need to do for the country right now. That's David Gibbs. He's the CEO of Yum Brands.